Part 1, she walked 500 miles carrying one secret. The soldiers would later say they had seen thousands of refugees during the war. But they had never seen anyone like her. Germany. April, 1945. The war was collapsing into silence. Roads that once carried armies now carried ordinary people. Mothers. Fathers. Children. Old men pushing handcarts. Entire lives reduced to whatever could be carried by hand. Along one muddy road in central Germany, a woman appeared through the morning fog. She was alone. Her coat hung loosely from her shoulders. Her shoes were worn nearly flat. Rain had soaked the hem of her dress days earlier, and it had never fully dried. Yet she kept walking. One step. Then another. Then another. Her name was Anna Weiss. She was 29 years old. And according to those who would later hear her story, she had already traveled nearly 500 miles on foot. No train. No vehicle. No horse. Only her own determination. But that was not what caught people's attention. It was what she carried. Cradled tightly against her chest was a bundle wrapped in a faded gray blanket. Even from a distance, it was obvious how fiercely she protected it. Her arms never loosened. Her grip never weakened. When she stopped to rest, the bundle remained against her heart. When she crossed streams, she held it high above the water. When she slept beneath trees, she slept with one arm around it. Whatever was inside mattered more to her than food. More than comfort. Perhaps even more than her own survival. The road stretched ahead beneath a cold gray sky. Spring had arrived on the calendar, but winter still lingered in the air. Wind moved through leafless branches. Mud clung to every step. Anna's breathing had become shallow hours ago. Her legs trembled with exhaustion. Still, she continued west. Toward the American lines. Toward the distant checkpoints that marked the edge of uncertainty and the beginning of something she could not yet name. By late afternoon, the clouds began to break. Pale sunlight touched the fields. For the first time all day, Anna stopped walking. Not because she wanted to. Because she could see them. Far ahead. Beyond a rise in the road. American soldiers. Small figures at first. Barely visible against the horizon. She stood completely still. The wind lifted strands of hair across her face. Her eyes remained fixed on the checkpoint. It was closer than she had imagined. Closer than it had been yesterday. Closer than it had been a week ago. 500 miles. Thousands of steps. Endless uncertainty. And now she was finally here. Yet instead of relief, something else appeared in her expression. Fear. Not fear for herself. Fear for the bundle in her arms. Her fingers tightened around the blanket. Her shoulders straightened. Then she resumed walking. Slowly. Carefully. As if every remaining step carried the weight of a promise. Ahead, American soldiers were beginning to notice the lone figure approaching through the fading daylight. None of them knew her name. None of them knew where she had come from. And none of them could possibly imagine why a German mother had walked 500 miles across a broken continent carrying the one thing she refused to leave behind. The American checkpoint sat on a low ridge overlooking miles of open farmland. Sandbags lined the position. A radio antenna swayed gently in the evening wind. Trucks stood parked beside temporary tents. It was not a place designed for drama. Most days passed in routine. Refugees arrived. Papers were checked. Directions were given. Then they moved on. But as the lone woman continued her slow approach across the field, conversations began to fade. Several soldiers looked up from their work. One lowered a coffee cup. Another shaded his eyes against the setting sun. Something about her seemed unusual. Not dangerous. Not threatening. Just unusual. She walked with the careful steps of someone who had reached the limits of exhaustion long ago and kept going anyway. More importantly, she never adjusted the bundle in her arms. Most people carrying something that far would eventually shift the weight from one side to another. She never did. It remained pressed against her chest with almost ceremonial care. Private Daniel Harper was the first to reach the road. He could not have been older than 20. A farm boy from Iowa who had spent the last year crossing Europe. He watched the woman stop 20 feet from the checkpoint. For a moment neither of them spoke. The wind moved softly through the grass around them. Finally Daniel cleared his throat. "Ma'am, can you understand English?" The woman looked up. Her face was pale beneath a layer of road dust. Tired blue eyes met his. Then she nodded once. "A little," she answered quietly. Her voice sounded fragile, as though it had not been used much in recent weeks. Daniel glanced at the bundle. "What are you carrying?" Immediately her arms tightened. Not dramatically. Not fearfully. Simply protectively. The gesture was small. But everyone nearby noticed it. "I need to speak with an American officer," she said. Daniel exchanged a look with another soldier. Refugees often requested help. Food. Transportation. Medical assistance. But there was something different about the way she spoke. Not desperate. Determined. As though she had spent months preparing for this exact moment. Within minutes the request reached Captain Michael Carter. At 36, Carter had seen enough of the war to understand that appearances often conceal deeper stories. He stepped out from headquarters carrying a clipboard beneath one arm. His uniform was neat despite the long day. A silver wristwatch reflected the fading sunlight as he approached. He expected another displaced civilian. Instead he found himself studying a woman who looked as though she had walked out of a different world. Her coat was patched in several places. Mud covered her shoes. Yet her posture remained remarkably straight. Even exhaustion had not taken that away from her. Carter stopped a few feet away. "I am Captain Michael Carter," he said calmly. "What can I do for you?" The woman hesitated. Her eyes moved briefly across the checkpoint. The tents. The trucks. The American flags painted on vehicle doors. She seemed to be confirming that she had truly arrived. Then she looked back at him. "My name is Anna Weiss." Her voice remained steady despite her condition. "I came to find the Americans." Carter almost smiled at the obvious statement. Then he noticed something. She had not once asked for food. Not water. Not medical attention. Not shelter. Most people arriving after such a journey requested those things immediately. Anna requested nothing. Except this meeting. "You have found us," Carter replied. "Now tell me why you are here." For several seconds she remained silent. The evening air grew cooler. Somewhere behind the checkpoint a truck engine started and then fell quiet again. Finally Anna lowered her eyes toward the blanket in her arms. A strange expression crossed her face. Relief. Fear. Hope. All at once. When she looked up again, her eyes seemed brighter than before. "Because what I carry belongs somewhere safe," she said softly. The answer only deepened the mystery. Carter glanced at the bundle. The blanket was old. Gray. Carefully folded around something he still could not identify. Whatever shape existed beneath the fabric remained hidden. Yet Anna held it with the devotion of a mother protecting the most valuable thing she had ever known. Around them, the soldiers had become unusually quiet. One by one, they found reasons to remain nearby. Nobody said it aloud. But everyone was wondering the same thing. After 500 miles of hardship, what could possibly be important enough for a woman to carry every step of the way without ever letting go? Captain Michael Carter studied her for a long moment. Years of military service had taught him that people revealed themselves through small details. The way they stood. The way they spoke. The things they chose to protect. Anna Weiss looked as though she had not slept properly in weeks. Her hands were reddened by weather and distance. There was mud on her shoes, dust on her sleeves, and exhaustion in every movement she made. Yet the blanket remained perfectly arranged. Not once had she allowed it to slip. Not once had she loosened her hold. Carter glanced toward the headquarters tent. The sun was dropping lower now. Long shadows stretched across the field. Evening would arrive soon. "Come with me," he said gently. Anna nodded. The soldiers stepped aside as she followed him toward a small wooden building that served as the checkpoint office. Inside, a single lamp hung from the ceiling. A coffee pot sat on a metal stove in the corner. Maps covered one wall. Nothing about the room was remarkable. Yet when Anna crossed the threshold, she paused for several seconds. Her eyes moved across the simple furnishings as if she had entered a church. Safe. The word seemed to settle over her without being spoken. Carter pulled out a chair. "Please sit down." Anna hesitated before lowering herself carefully into the seat. Even then, the bundle remained in her arms. Captain Carter poured water into a metal cup and placed it on the desk. "Drink." For the first time since arriving, she accepted something. Her fingers trembled slightly as she lifted the cup. She drank slowly. Deliberately. Not like someone desperate. Like someone who understood the value of every small comfort. Outside, the sounds of the checkpoint continued. Trucks moving. Soldiers talking. Radios crackling. Ordinary sounds. Human sounds. Anna listened to them quietly. Then she closed her eyes for a brief moment. Carter noticed the expression immediately. Relief. The kind that only appears when a person finally reaches the end of a very long journey. "How long have you been traveling?" he asked. Anna opened her eyes. "Almost 7 weeks." Carter leaned back slightly. 7 weeks. The number hung in the air. Even in peacetime, such a journey would have been difficult. On foot, carrying something every mile, it seemed almost impossible. "Why?" he asked. Anna looked down at the blanket. For several seconds she said nothing. Then a faint smile appeared. Not happiness. Memory. "Because I made a promise." Carter waited. She did not continue. The silence stretched. Outside the window, the last sunlight of the day painted the fields gold. Finally Carter spoke again. "A promise to whom?" This time the answer came immediately. "To someone who trusted me." Her voice was soft. Yet there was strength beneath it. The strength of certainty. Carter had interviewed hundreds of civilians during the war. Most stories shifted under questioning. Details changed. Memories blurred. But Anna's certainty never moved. Whatever mission had carried her across 500 miles remained completely intact. A knock sounded at the door. Private Daniel. Harper stepped inside. "Sir, the doctor is available if she needs medical attention." Carter looked toward Anna. "You should see him." She shook her head. "Later." "You are exhausted." "Later," she repeated. Not stubbornly. Calmly. As if nothing else mattered until one specific task had been completed. Carter exchanged a glance with Daniel. Both men were thinking the same thing. The mystery was no longer the object itself. The mystery was the devotion. What could inspire this level of sacrifice? What could convince a woman to walk across a continent carrying the same burden every hour of every day? As the room grew darker, Anna gently adjusted one corner of the blanket. It was the first time anyone had seen her touch it differently. The movement lasted less than a second. Yet it revealed something important. Beneath the gray fabric, something small shifted slightly. Carter noticed it immediately. So did Daniel. Neither man spoke. But both suddenly understood one thing. Whatever rested inside that blanket was far more fragile than anyone had imagined. The lamp cast a warm circle of light across the small office. Outside, darkness settled over the checkpoint. One by one, lights appeared across the compound. A truck rumbled past. Somewhere in the distance, a radio played softly before fading into static. Inside the room, nobody seemed interested in leaving. Captain Michael Carter remained seated behind the desk. Private Daniel Harper stood near the door. Anna Weiss sat quietly with the blanket resting across her lap. The silence felt different now. Not uncomfortable. Expectant. Carter folded his hands together. You said you made a promise. Anna nodded. Yes. And that promise brought you here. Another nod. For several moments she stared at the fabric beneath her fingertips. The blanket itself was worn thin. Years of use had softened every fold. Its edges were frayed. Small repairs had been sewn into the corners by careful hands. It was not valuable in any ordinary sense. Yet Anna touched it the way people touch family photographs. The promise was made 6 weeks ago, she said quietly. Her voice seemed distant. As if she were speaking from another place. Entirely. Daniel pulled out a chair and sat down without being asked. Neither he nor Carter interrupted. The town where I lived was becoming empty, Anna continued. People were leaving every day. Nobody knew what tomorrow would bring. Nobody knew which roads were safe or where food could be found. She paused. The room remained still. One morning I visited an old church at the edge of town. Carter listened carefully. The story did not sound rehearsed. It sounded remembered. There was a woman there, Anna said. An older woman. She had spent many years caring for things that other people had forgotten. A faint smile appeared for the first time that evening. She always said that history disappears when nobody protects it. Daniel glanced toward the blanket. Carter noticed. So did Anna. Yet she continued without explaining further. The church had been standing for generations. Through storms. Through hard winters. Through every change the world brought. But by that spring, everyone knew it would not remain untouched forever. Her fingers brushed gently across the blanket. The woman asked me for a favor. Carter leaned forward slightly. What kind of favor? Anna's eyes met his. There was no hesitation. She asked me to carry something somewhere safe. The answer raised even more questions. Daniel shifted in his chair. Carter remained patient. Why you? He asked. Anna looked down for a moment. Because I was leaving. Because I had no family left in that town. Because she trusted me. Outside, the wind pressed softly against the window. The building creaked. Somewhere nearby, a soldier laughed at something a friend had said. Ordinary sounds. Yet inside the office, every detail of Anna's story seemed unusually important. Did she tell you where to go? Carter asked. Yes. To the Americans? Yes. The answer came immediately. Carter studied her expression. There was no uncertainty. Whoever had given her this responsibility had done so with a clear purpose. And you accepted. Anna smiled sadly. I told her it might be impossible. What did she say? For the first time, Anna's smile grew slightly wider. Not because the memory was happy. Because it was familiar. She said some things are worth carrying even when the road is impossible. The words settled over the room. Daniel looked toward the floor. Carter glanced briefly at his watch. Then back at Anna. He had expected a practical explanation. A document. A message. Some military concern. Instead he found himself listening to a story about trust. About responsibility. About a promise that had somehow become stronger than fear, hunger, exhaustion, or distance. Anna lowered her eyes toward the blanket once more. Her expression softened. Every morning during the journey, she said quietly, I reminded myself that it did not belong to me. I was only its guardian. Carter felt something shift in the room. Not understanding. Not yet. But the beginning of it. Whatever rested inside that faded gray blanket was clearly more than an object. It carried a history. A purpose. And perhaps the reason one exhausted woman had crossed hundreds of miles believing that reaching this small American checkpoint mattered more than anything else in the world. That night, Captain Michael Carter finally convinced Anna to rest. Not because she agreed she needed sleep. Because he promised that the blanket would remain beside her at all times. A cot was prepared in a small room near the checkpoint office. Clean sheets. A wool blanket. A lantern turned low against the darkness. It was more comfort than Anna had seen in many weeks. Yet even after lying down, she kept one hand resting on the gray bundle. As if letting go was impossible. Outside, the camp settled into its nighttime rhythm. Boots crossed gravel paths. Quiet conversations drifted through the cool spring air. Somewhere a mechanic finished repairs on a truck engine. Ordinary sounds. Peaceful sounds. For the first time in 7 weeks, Anna slept without worrying about where she would sleep the next night. Yet her rest was not deep. Memories followed her. Long roads. Endless fields. Rain falling through bare branches. The journey returned in fragments. She remembered the 3rd week most clearly. The week when her strength nearly failed. Food had become scarce. Entire days passed with little more than a crust of bread and water. Gathered from farm wells. Her shoes had begun to separate at the seams. Every mile felt longer than the one before. One cold morning she found herself standing beside a country road, staring at the horizon without moving. The blanket felt heavier than it ever had before. Her arms ached. Her shoulders burned. For the first time, doubt entered her thoughts. Not doubt about the promise. Doubt about herself. Could she finish what she had started? Could one exhausted woman really carry this responsibility across a broken continent? She remembered sitting beneath an oak tree that afternoon. Wind moved through the branches overhead. The road stretched empty in both directions. No travelers. No wagons. No signs of help. Just silence. For nearly an hour she sat there holding the bundle. Then something happened. Not dramatic. Not miraculous. Simply human. An elderly farmer appeared from a nearby field carrying a metal pail. He offered her water without asking questions. They shared no common language beyond a few simple words. Yet he understood enough. He saw a tired traveler. She saw kindness. Before leaving, the old man pointed west. Then he smiled and touched the brim of his hat. The gesture lasted only seconds. But Anna never forgot it. Because it reminded her of something important. The journey was not hers alone. Everywhere she went, small acts of decency seemed to appear at exactly the right moment. A woman who shared a loaf of bread. A family who offered shelter inside a barn during a storm. A priest who gave her directions and wished her safe passage. None of them knew what she carried. None of them asked. Yet each became part of the road that eventually led here. Anna woke shortly before dawn. Pale light filtered through the window. For a few seconds she seemed confused by the unfamiliar room. Then her eyes found the gray blanket resting beside her. Immediately she relaxed. A soft knock sounded at the door. Captain Carter entered carrying 2 steaming cups of coffee. The smell filled the room. Rich. Warm. Familiar. Anna sat up slowly. Carter handed her one of the cups. "Good morning," he said. She accepted it with both hands. The warmth spread through her fingers. For several moments neither spoke. Then Carter noticed something different. The exhaustion remained. But beneath it, another emotion had appeared. Anticipation. As though the end of the journey had finally arrived. Anna looked toward the window where the first sunlight touched the horizon. Then she looked down at the blanket. Her expression grew thoughtful. Almost reverent. Finally she spoke. Cliffhanger. Anna looked at the bundle and whispered, "Today. I think it is time for you to see what I carried all this way."